Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyon, where we talk about growth systems and what actually works. Sometimes growth doesn't stall because demand disappears. It stalls because you've built your business on systems you don't actually own. My guest today learned that lesson the hard way when his family's cost to acquire a lead nearly tripled overnight. That pressure focused or forced a complete rethink of how they generated business and ultimately gave them something every founder wants, which is predictability. Dillon Hill, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. So take us back to your family business. You were buying ads and things in a marketplace, I think. And what changed that suddenly made the old way of buying leads unsustainable?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what changed, but basically the position we were in. So my dad started his business basically to get us out of poverty. When I was born, my family was living out of the back of a van. And then I was born, and then we realized that wasn't, or rather, they realized that wasn't a great place to raise a child. So he started a
Hmm.
business. And he started his business by literally going door to door and by building fences and gates in our backyard, in our apartment backyard. So a lot of why the business started and how it started and the logistics of where customers were coming from were based on what was necessary, right? What would put dinner on the table tomorrow? What would get us out of that van? What would take care of my child? In this case, myself.
Yeah.
And that never really stopped. That philosophy never ended. And certainly as the company grew, I had no idea what was happening. Sure. I saw my dad was busy and I was grateful for the opportunities that he provided. And then when I started to reach the point of being a little bit more aware of it was at the same time where things started to change quite a bit. So right as I started to be curious about the business and my natural interest in sort of the computer side of things, being a nerd my whole life, I was leaning
Hmm.
more towards that direction. It was at the same time where the game changed quite a lot and sort of that growth, but through whatever whatever means necessary started to really become a problem. Part of the problem was he would work with ad agencies that would, for example, own the account. So basically, whatever they said he was getting per lead was what it was. He had no insight into the details of that. He couldn't really take the insights that were learned from his ad spend and take it over to a new agency or in-house or whatever. Similarly, he was buying it from, like you mentioned, marketplaces and things like that. All of these things because when things slowed down, he needed leads. He didn't really care about consequences 2 years down the road, right? He needed to take care of our family and he didn't want to kind of go back to where we were.
So
Um,
what kind of business was it? Still fences that he was selling?
yeah, custom ironwork, fences, gates,
Oh,
handrails.
okay. Oh, so he's a craftsman too.
Yeah, these days not so much, more of the big boss man, but back in the day,
Ah, okay. All right.
yeah. And you just all these small things really just came from making urgent decisions rather than long-term forward ones. And they just around that same time started to all happen. And then he
And
had someone finally who could take a look at it and see that was an issue.
what was that like? What was going through his mind? How did he realize that he didn't have the control he thought he had?
I think it was finally having the opportunity for someone else to think about the future, right? Because when you're in his position as a founder and one in a situation that's so personal, right? Literally pulled us out of poverty. You just you can't think about that stuff, right? You're too busy trying to survive day to day. And so that's where his headspace was. And because I was growing an interest in this realm, that finally gave him the opportunity. Oh, wow, someone is actually able to think about this without sacrificing the day to day survival. And really, it was just almost like an awareness issue, right? Or like an availability of time issue. So yeah, he
You
was
know,
scared, I guess, right? Scared,
what
confused.
when you were talking to him at the time, you were what? A teenager?
Yeah, I would say 16, 17.
Oh yeah. What kind of conversations were you having about his fears of poverty?
I would say that at that point in time, they were definitely lower than they were. The pressure, obviously, he wasn't talking to me as a child, right?
Yeah.
The pressures and the experience of, I literally, I felt the effects of having lived in that van. I was too young to remember it. And then we moved into a one-bedroom apartment and then a two-bedroom. And then at that sort of this time in the story, we were living in a house that he had purchased. So there were never really direct conversations, but it was very clear the impact of his decision making on our family's ability to access resources, our ability to thrive. So that was the The first time we really spoke about it, and the tension was more so, this is why things are broken. It's because I was making decisions to survive day to day. And I was like, yes, but we're okay now. Right. And wouldn't it be so great if you didn't have to worry quite as much about this? And maybe some of that came from my own perspective of as a dad trying to build a business. There were times he was distracted and stuff, and I was maybe a little bit biased in my perspective of, hey, if you could step away from putting out fires all the time and build reliable systems. Of course, I wasn't speaking in these terms at the time. But yeah, I think ultimately that's where it was headed.
And so did he have, was his customer base, they buy once and then they just go away, or do they buy multiple times from him?
There's some minor things in repairs and maybe automated gate installation that is reoccurring revenue, but by and large, it's one time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And from the ad agencies, what you just said it earlier, you couldn't see, you didn't own any of the marketing campaigns or or any of the details. So you didn't know how leads were converting or any of that stuff.
Yeah. And to your point, he was a craftsman, right? He was a guy who was working out in the fields. That's how he learned his trade. And then starting a business again was just out of necessity. So what made sense to him was, okay, if they charge me this much for a lead, if it's $50 for a lead, I don't want to say comprehend because that kind of miscredits his intellect, but it's easier to contextualize that in the rest of the business. A lead is $25. Great. I'm just going to pay someone $25 for a lead. And it's simple and it gets the job done.
Yeah. Right.
But, and that's the headspace he was in. But yeah, things happen, right? They change the price. And then suddenly you got to start to think about, oh, what leads to a lead being this much? And how much am I paying them? And how much am I paying for the economics that lead to that lead cost?
Did he adjust the way that he was pricing things when the prices went up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's one of his
Yeah.
inputs. Right? Raw materials, leads, it all factors into the
Yeah. Yeah. So what changed first?
the technical steps that we took.
Yeah. Yeah. So you started taking a look and you probably had a journey of just understanding um, lead gen.
Yeah, the biggest thing was a new website. The website was very outdated. And naturally, anytime that you're making any other adjustments in the realm of marketing, these days all roads lead back to the website. That's where we started. That is where at that point I had the most experience because of that slightly more technical background. So,
Hmm.
yeah, new website, a little bit more updated, a little bit more straight to the point, and also something that he controlled, right? In the past, anytime something needed to be changed, you had to reach out to the web guy and wait a week. So yeah, those.
Yeah. So the website, but you're still buying leads and uh, you hadn't turned that off yet. So
Yeah.
one of the things that you mentioned to me was you helped a friend break some world record. I don't remember what it was, but you learned from that. Tell us about that, how that
Yeah.
came about.
So that was when I was in college. So about 3 or 4 years into this journey that we're talking about here. I was attending university and a childhood friend of mine told me that he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. After some kind of sitting with that, I decided to drop out of college. There were a lot of conversations with my dad because he did work so hard to build a safe foundation that allowed me to go to college. So the idea of me dropping
Right.
ties into the thing. But no, ultimately, yeah, I created a foundation with the goal of helping my friend in this year that he had left pursue his bucket list. Number 4 was to break a world record. So we broke the world record for the largest bone marrow donation drive. Our story went super viral. At this point, it has about 500 million views across the internet. We were on
Wow.
every news outlet you can imagine. And yeah, we broke that world record. Over 13,000 people helped us, signed up to donate their bone marrow. And then incredibly, one of those people was the perfect genetic match that he ultimately needed. And our little marketing campaign saved his life. And yeah, he's been in remission ever since.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, it really changed my perspective on a lot of things, even in this realm of marketing.
And so we got a three-year gap in time here. You got a website, and in between that, you went to college, and then you did this campaign. Was your father still buying leads from these other places, or had you delved into lead generation on your own by
So
that point?
essentially what had happened as a result of the website was phasing out a lot of the older marketing channels, right? So like the phone books, the magazines, things like that.
Ah,
Because largely because it was just easier to understand where leads were coming from. At this
right.
point in time, though, he hadn't fully stepped away from the buying leads thing. I think the idea of building a website, success is very visual, right? As his son, who's naive and saying, I want to do this, I have an idea to help the business. If I build a website, it's clear if it was a success or a failure, right? Does it look functional? Does it still rank in the same position on Google? It's like a yes or no. But it was difficult for him to trust a complete inexperienced person with things were tied to the economics, right?
And so he hadn't built his trust yet.
Exactly.
He didn't trust the system yet.
Exactly. And I think that this campaign, this personal experience I had really helped to reinforce that. And I would say around that time was like phase two of
Mhm.
trust and moving away from those unreliable systems.
Yeah. So what happened then? So you took this record-breaking experience, which has gone viral and saved your friend's life.
Yeah.
You just still tight,
Yeah.
you and your
Yeah.
buddy. Yeah, I imagine. What happened next? What did you do next? I assume you'd say, hey, let's repeat this.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. It was really spawned from just the gratitude that we had, the incredible opportunities that were presented to us. It didn't feel fair that those would end with our campaign, right? That he stepped
Mhm.
away because he was in remission, living a very normal life, and rightfully, it should not end with that, right? So we really tried to continue that momentum, helping other people and continuing that foundation. We helped a few other people with cancer, crossing
Oh, okay.
like 20 to 30 of their bucket list items. And then at that point, I was also becoming an adult. I still was moving out and things like that. I started my agency and was running both of those concurrently. And yeah, the passion side is the helping people, and then the reality side was running my own company. Really helped to have the experience with the family business there too.
Yeah. And so did you go back and was your father your first client for your agency?
Yeah, and
So
also the
tell
hardest
us,
one to convince.
how did you exactly? So how did those conversations go? What did it feel like trying to convince your dad that you can do this? And what happened when he started to believe in it?
Yeah, that was the fundamental tension, right? Was can you do this? Was this just a lucky experience that you had? And again, because of the background of the business, like it really was spawned out of desperation. So to hand that over to someone requires an immense amount of trust, even beyond a typical business. But it was hard and there were steps. But ultimately, I think it's just like Lego blocks, right? We did the first, and then we did the second, and then we did the third. And I think they started to really respect my ability to communicate what comes next and break it into smaller chunks, right? If I were to come to them on day one and to say every single part of from awareness to signing a contract, we need to drastically change, it would not have worked. But it was very much, hey, this is the thing I feel most confident in. These are the things that I had exposure to from this world record campaign. Let's build off from there, right? And then always like being honest that you are my playground. I am learning on the family business, but also I'm not learning completely from scratch and reflecting on our failures and building off those successes.
So when you started working with him, were there failures? Going viral and doing things helping people is a lot different than selling people's fences.
Yeah,
So
I don't
there had to have been
think
some
there
trial
were
and error there.
catastrophic failures. There was certainly wasted money, right? Not every campaign was perfect, certainly.
No,
But I don't
never.
think there was a moment where we misspent 15 grand or anything that was a huge mistake like that. I wouldn't call them mistakes. It was just learning. Small little adjustments needed to be made.
How did your dad he had to let go of those lead sources that he had
Yeah.
built relationships with because there were relationships. How did he feel about letting those go?
I don't think he had any allegiance.
No.
Yeah, I don't think there was much loyalty. A lot of them were like overseas and stuff. I don't think they were very close relationships. In fact, the old marketing channels, the magazines and the phone books were a lot tighter than like the lead marketplaces.
Yeah. Does he use the yellow pages in the magazines anymore?
No.
No. No. So he thought that buying leads was a strategy. It turned out it kind of drained him and blindsided him
Yeah.
when he decided that they weren't sustainable anymore. What happened to the business when the prices tripled?
Psychological damage was the biggest thing, right? The
Yeah.
stress of realizing that how your business survives is in the hands of a single email is like the biggest thing. But no, the prices changed. The way he interacted with the sales process changed. And then obviously the investments in alternatives changed as well.
Yeah. So you said that he was worried about a lot relying on an email.
Yeah, just the eye-opening experience of, hey, they could change the price at any time, and there's really nothing we can do about it.
So they were doing email marketing and I'm
Oh,
assuming,
and I made the announcement of the price change. If they,
oh,
yeah,
I see. And there was no warning. So
no,
he
it's
had to
maybe with some of
scramble
the
and
platforms, but by and large, it was a shock.
yeah. And how did he react to that? Did he feel like he was betrayed or did he just go, that's just the rising cost of doing business?
Certainly not. No, he didn't say that was the price of doing business, but I don't think it was betrayal either. It was just another fire to put out, if that makes
Uh-huh.
sense.
And
Like,
he's a fireman. He knows how to put out fires.
yeah,
He's,
exactly. Or
he's
he needs someone to clear the brush if we're
yeah.
for.
Yeah. So did I, when was it the point where he said, okay, I trust this now. What happened to his life and to how things were working and how he was,
I would say that we're honestly not the whole way there. I'm at the point now in my personal career where I feel very comfortable in the marketing and the operations side is starting to become very interesting to me. Sort of the
Mhm.
handoff between a little bit between marketing and sales, but certainly between sales and fulfillment. And we're still not there, right? Every sort of idea is a PowerPoint presentation. It takes convincing, but his relationship with work has changed dramatically. And I think it comes from the reliability of the leads, right? Certainly algorithm changes are a scare and there's things that need to be tweaked, but for the most part, you're not going to wake up with Google ads, for example, your own Google ads account telling you that leads are now 3 times more expensive. You'll see it coming slowly over time and you'll be able to react and improve. So yeah, he fishes twice a week. He's usually off
really?
by 1 p.m. So he's very much in sort of the retirement, rolling into the retirement phase of his journey.
But when he was in the thick of things, he was working what, 60, 80 hours a week. And how was that?
Yeah, just a ton. I don't know the exact hours, but his life was work, uh, a large majority of it. And even when he wasn't directly working, when he wasn't at the office or in the field or wherever it might be, it was taking his mental energy.
Yeah. And so how did that affect the family?
There were times when it was really rough, right? If a job went wrong or something and there was a $20,000 contract on the line, things like that, of course, would just be like acute stress of like him just on the phone all the time and things like that. But it certainly affected the family, but I think it was just a trade-off thing, right? Because it did pull us out of poverty. I think it was maybe like a necessary evil, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So did he bring marketing in-house now or are you his in-house marketing agency?
Yeah, it's pretty much me. A younger brother now is getting involved a little bit in the operation side of things, but he doesn't pay any more agencies or marketplaces or anything like that.
Well, he pays you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. 'Cause
But it's like an
you
in-house.
don't work for free. Yeah. So what's changed now
Yeah,
that
I
he's
think the big
got that
changes are
in-house?
shifting deeper and deeper into the customer experience.
And what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So like awareness is strong, right? That was a problem back in the day. For example, his SEO position might not have been that great. So just appearing in front of people who are interested in buying was the first problem we tackled, and then a little bit deeper in the funnel. And so now it's really where we're focusing in is the sales process is where we're at now with a little bit of the operations. So
Now, tell me about the sales process. Is that something is that another thing that there was friction on because he did it a certain way and you had to reassemble the steps?
there is significantly more friction, and I'm using the present tense very particularly because it's ongoing. That is very much where I don't think I would say that is what he enjoys about the job, but I think he still maintains a mentality of this is the make or break it moment with a customer, and I cannot hand that off to someone else, is the kind of the headspace he's in. So he maintains quite a bit more opinion about the sales process than he did marketing, right?
So
Because
is he the bottleneck in sales? Is he the only
yeah, yeah,
salesperson?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
especially if he wants to retire. How's that going to work?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thesis statement that I've been pitching for a while now.
But he has less stress, but he's still stressed about the sales process.
Yeah. I would say the stress exists in operations and fulfillment, but the time exists in sales. So sales isn't
Okay.
necessarily stressful to him, but it does consume a fair amount of his time.
Okay. What about a fulfillment? There's some friction there too.
Yeah, I think the friction on that side mainly comes from my lack of exposure. So like I have opinions, but they're not as grounded as the sales process, right? So the sales process, like I can listen to phone calls, I can read emails, and I can really understand the opportunities to improve. But I'm not in the shop. I don't know anything about metalworking. I don't know, for example, how they're documenting when a gate is in the shop versus when it's in the field. So the friction comes from I think that's probably the least experience I've ever had when proposing an interest in changing things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, does the company have difficulty fulfilling the
No,
job? Then what do
the
you,
bottleneck is definitely sales.
okay. So, yeah, you mentioned there was friction in fulfillment. I didn't know I guess I don't know what you mean.
There's opportunities to improve in a way that would reduce his stress, but it's not necessary. That's not where the problem starts, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's still problems. There's still things that you're working through.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So what's next for his business?
Yeah, I think personally, because he is in that period of headed towards retirement in both interest and just age. And also my brother is focusing more on the operations side. It does seem like we're leading into that handoff where my brother handles the fulfillment, I handle the marketing sales, and that's the direction we're headed.
So you're going to take over the sales position.
Oh, certainly not the sales position, no. But
Oh, okay.
maintain the marketing and then make sure that someone is in position to do the sales.
Okay. So that's a big to-do item for him for him to get out of the way to let someone come in. Do you have plans for that what's that like? What are those conversations like that you're having?
It is the most important thing to him. And I do think it is that's where success or failure happens is in that conversation with the customer. So it's the ongoing struggle of if I hire someone else and they drop the ball, that can have big consequences, is the summary of it all.
Is he willing to take anybody on as an apprentice?
Yeah, he's taken people on in the field and things like that. He did have a few bad experiences just with people not really dropping the ball, but he's had trouble. He hires people that have the technical experience and not the sales
Mm.
experience. And so that's caused some failures, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, if you're not on top of the sales, the presentation, the whole steps that
Yeah.
are necessary in the sales process, being technical, knowing the technical things helps when you're
Yeah,
talking to a customer, but you need to get into their head and understand the result they want.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So is he still looking for salespeople, or is he got someone under his wing now?
Not at the moment, no. I think based on the last experience, he had closed his mind a little bit more than
Uh,
that. So it's definitely necessary. I think deep down he knows it's necessary, but it's just not a step that he's taking right now.
but he's got all the deals in his head on paper or in a CR combination.
The CRM was the most recent big upgrade we did, and that took a lot off of his plate, or a lot out of his head, but some of it is still in his head, but for the most part, yeah.
How resistant was he in adopting CRM, or did you take
Extreme,
that on for him?
extreme. He was a pen and
M-
paper guy.
Yeah, most
Yeah,
salespeople are very resistant. They find out that it really helps them a lot. Has he
yeah, and
come
he
to
works
that?
from home now. For 75% of his day is work from home because he has it all in the CRM as opposed to having to go to the office to get the calendar. So
Ah,
that
that makes a difference. And is he still going out in the field and making sales calls in person? Probably.
yeah, he's doing like the estimates, the measuring, and things like that.
Yeah, but you've got some automation in place for to help with that, or is it still pen and paper?
Yeah, a few automations make it a little bit more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. So you came from poverty. Your dad's been in survival mode his entire career. He
Yeah.
still is. He still is. But you've helped him because of your experiences and your diligence. You've helped him along the way to systematize some of his marketing or most of his marketing, really. And you're slowly implementing things that can help him finally retire. But he's fishing and he doesn't golf too, does he?
No, it doesn't. That'd be the perfect combo.
Yeah, fishing and golf. Golf takes a lot of time and
Yep.
it takes a lot of effort to learn. So how do you feel about the business today? And do you think that he's still in a good position, or there's some challenges yet to?
I think he's an incredible position from a headspace perspective. The transformation from when I was younger to now is something that has given me a lot of important perspective. Something that I think because I was during the poverty period, I experienced some of that, right? Not a ton. My default would be to be very anxious, but I think seeing his transformation in that has been very helpful for me. And yeah, completely different relationship with work, which is great. Yeah, I think my fear of what happens next is because he wants to maintain the status quo as he goes into retirement, which is very reasonable and is very
Yeah,
comfortable for him right now, will result in a fire on theme, a surprise, a last minute realization that, oh, there wasn't a great transition period here. So the company needs to be sold now rather than smoothly transitioned into a generational business.
yeah, and that's what you'd like to have happen.
Yeah, I would love that. I owe a lot to the obvious stuff. I owe a lot to, right? The fact that we have, I grew up in a home.
You grew
Um,
up in a hole instead of a van. Yeah,
Certainly owe that to the business, but also just more generally having a playground to grow my career is something that has brought me a lot of success and I'm very grateful for. And I would like to make sure that that can continue to happen down the road.
but what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned from this whole journey so far?
I think it's that to really have the confidence that you're not going to explode at any given day is you have to build
Hmm.
reliable systems, right?
Uh-huh.
In running a business, chaos is always going to happen. But if you have, for example, averages to compare against, or a framework to apply, or some sort of, hey, this has happened before, we can get through it, that is essential. Otherwise, like people say, the business will be running you, not the other way around. And I've really learned the implications of what can happen if you don't do that right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been a pleasure listening. So your dad is he's trusting what you're doing. You came from poverty and you're not in that position anymore. You've got your own agency, your own business, and I assume that you're applying some of those things, life lessons that you've learned to your business. It's not always a matter of survival, but survival is important.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people who were starting out their business, their service-based business, that you would tell them to avoid or tell them to do from the get-go?
Yeah. If you're doing it to survive, or if you're stuck in that survivability headspace, you're probably pretty uncomfortable. And if you're feeling that way, use that uncomfort instead, I think, to focus on the future, if that makes sense. So the same thing that we've been saying, which is build the sustainable systems. But
Yeah.
I don't want to say that too simply because it does take a level of discomfort. It does take a level of sacrifice, right? Your current moment might be a little bit
Yeah.
more chaotic as a result of that decision, but it really will make the rest of your career, the rest of your business so much smoother. If you take a second to breathe, build those systems, and just have that solid groundwork as opposed to deciding what to do as they happen.
Right on. So Dillon is offering a free pipeline audit for Lead Machine Growth Show listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Like I said before, started an agency. This next month, we'll actually be celebrating having earned $50 million for our clients.
Wow.
Much more experience than just my dad's business now
Yeah.
in basically helping lead dependent companies get more leads. And so the pipeline audit is an in-depth look at where is your bottleneck. Some more often than not, that's mid to bottom of funnel, but if you feel that that's really strong, then there's only so many leads that you can capture. You need to start generating demand. We'll find out exactly where in that pipeline we would recommend you focus your next marketing campaign on so that you can build a system in that part of the customer experience now that your other one's good to go. And if you don't have any data, that's also an opportunity as well. That usually is the easiest pipeline audit to do because there's only really a few places to start. So yeah. Basically, where exactly is your growth being held back? We'll point it out and give you some tips on how you might be able to get going.
All right. And you can go to cosmoforge.io.
Cosmoforge.io. Yeah. Or just search Cosmoforge and look for the rocket, the space helmet logo.
Oh, cool. I love that. And be sure to mention the Lead Machine Growth Show, and he'll give you a personal attention. No pitch. Show you what's working, what's being wasted, and what to fix first. So as we close out, one of the biggest lessons from today's conversation, I think, is that a business, they don't really struggle because they lack marketing. It's more often they struggle because they lack the systems that they truly own, which you've done a great job in doing that for your father, but also for many others. So congratulations on that. Remember, faith and action go hand in hand, so keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon, and Dillon Hill, thank you so much for your time today and coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.